What is the best way to check in with someone if I think they might be isolating themselves? The simple answer, just like with asking for support, the best way to check in with someone is to establish clear communication and a dialogue of support in advance. But if that isn't possible, then reach out with compassion and the desire to engage without the expectation that there is a problem. And if there is a problem, remember that it is not yours to solve. Invite them to go for a walk, grab a cup of coffee, get some ice cream, or even go to a movie. Suggesting an activity can take the pressure off of them so they don't feel like they have to perform or explain why they may not have been showing up as they normally would. Communicate to them that you love them for who they are, all of them, and that you are always there for them. Allow them the space to be themselves and to talk about anything that's coming up for them. Avoid statements like, "What's wrong with you? I'm worried about you. Why aren't you any fun lately?" Use statements like, "I'm checking in. I'm paying attention. I've noticed a shift in your energy. Is there anything you want to talk about?" When it comes to our inner circle, close friends, romantic partners, and especially our children, I recommend establishing an agreed upon line of communication that allows someone to check in without it feeling intrusive, undermining, or judgmental. A deeper understanding. I'll share two real life examples of how I check in with someone. Example number one, established communication in advance. My younger daughter, Grace, loves her alone time. She always has. From the time she was maybe 2 or 3 years old, she would actually ask for what she called me time. I have always done my best to honor her need for alone time. However, if I notice that it is beyond her normal amount of necessary alone time, or if she appears to be drifting further and further away, and we're having less of our normal conversations about her life, then I take all of that into account to determine if she has shifted from alone time to isolation. Grace is very private and she processes information and experiences internally, meaning she prefers to think things through on her own. Whereas I process externally, meaning that I like to discuss whatever is on my mind. Having an awareness of both of our processing styles and knowing that I would never want to come across as a controlling helicopter mom, but I also wouldn't want to come across as an absent or out of touch parent, I decided to invite Grace to have a conversation about how she would like to be approached if I was concerned about her. Immediately in our conversation, Grace let me know that she never wants to be asked what is wrong or if she's okay. She said both questions make her feel bad about herself and cause her to become defensive or feel guilty for not showing up the way others would like her to. After talking through some ideas, the agreement that Grace and I came up with was that if I say to her, "Hey, is there anything you'd like to talk about?" what I'm really saying is, "I've noticed a shift and I'm checking in." It's saying to her that I'm paying attention. However, I'm not pressuring her to talk, nor am I assuming anything is actually wrong. I'm simply checking in and letting her know that I'm here if there's anything she wants to talk about. Having this established form of communication has worked really well for us. But I'll tell you that 10 times out of 10, when I've said, "Is there anything you want to talk about?" she has said no. And with awareness of our agreement, that has been my cue to walk away. What I've learned from having this exchange with her for several years now is that what's been most important for her hasn't been talking about whatever is going on. It's been knowing that she is seen, that I'm paying attention, and that I care about her enough to check in, but that I also understand her and respect her enough that I'm willing to walk away without putting pressure on her to talk. This has been especially powerful because she knows how much I love to talk, and that in those moments when all I've wanted is to talk with her and hear about what's going on, I've made her the priority and followed the agreement we made. In doing so, she has always felt loved and deeply understood, which has allowed her the space to be herself and process experiences on her own. And 9 times out of 10, she would come to talk to me when she was ready to do so. That being said, I'll never know how often my sense to check in with her was right about there being something wrong, because I never pressured her to talk about anything. I always allowed her the time and space to talk about whatever was on her mind. Sometimes she'd fill me in on the fun and adventures that took place that day, and other times she'd share about challenges she'd been facing. The point about checking in wasn't to be right or to control the outcome. The point was to make sure she felt loved and supported, and I believe establishing how to best check in with her helped me to do that. Example number 2, a spontaneous check in. Seth and I became good friends in early 2022 after meeting through a wellness app and realizing that we lived less than 10 minutes from each other. We regularly met for coffee, and during those meetups, Seth was always inquisitive about life, how people achieve peace, and most of all, what brings them joy. He oozed kindness, curiosity, and a genuine desire for meaningful connection. In 2024, Seth remained positive and generally upbeat even as he went through a divorce. Navigating the divorce as well as finding a new home presented challenges, but he maintained the belief that everything was for the best. However, shortly after everything settled, I sensed him pulling away. It wasn't just that he was reaching out less. When we would talk, he seemed very distant and detached. He had shifted from being someone who was usually up for spontaneous meetups and deep conversations to simply being absent. He rarely responded to text messages, he avoided phone calls, and when we did meet up, he barely engaged in conversation. One night, after having dinner together, I drove him home, but before he got out of the car, I stopped him and said, Seth, before you go, I just want to share with you that I've noticed a big shift in how you experience the world and how you show up for yourself and others. I know you've been through a lot in this last year. I'm not worried because I know you always find the good in the most difficult times, but I am paying attention and I'm aware that you haven't been yourself. I'm going to keep calling and texting. I'm going to keep asking you to meet up, and I'm going to keep reminding you that you are loved. He sat there, hunched over, with his elbows on his knees and his hands holding his face. We were both quiet as I watched him process what I was saying. He began to cry, and I reached over, putting my hand on his shoulder, and I said, You're not alone. You have so many people in your life who love you. Even if he had gotten out of the car and walked away without saying anything, I would have known that I had done everything I could to support him through whatever was consuming him. But he didn't get out. We sat in the car for a while, silence between us, and my energy focused on sending him love. I wasn't asking for anything in return. I simply wanted him to know that I had noticed the shift and that I cared enough to say something. When he was ready, with his face still in his hands, he said, Thank you, Jenny. I don't think I had even realized how much of a dark place I've been in. Now that the divorce is final and I'm in my new house, it's like all the work is done, but now I feel all the pressure and pain that I didn't have time to feel before. I didn't realize that others could see or feel my pain. I'll admit that it makes me feel bad now, realizing that I've probably been letting people down. But at the same time, I'm so grateful you noticed and that you said something. It means everything to me that you care so much and that I'm not alone. We continued to talk for a bit as he processed out loud everything that he'd been feeling and holding on to. It was the most he'd shared in weeks, and as he talked, I could hear and feel his energy shifting. He became less monotone and more engaging. His eyes looked less empty and more full of reflection and possibility. It wasn't long before we both got out of the car and hugged goodbye. He thanked me again, and I looked him in the eyes and said, Always remember that you are loved, and I'm here if you ever need a reminder. It wasn't long before Seth was back to himself. My ongoing interactions with him reminded me that sometimes all we need is a friend to check in with us, and that we all benefit from someone checking in and pouring love into us.